Transmitting to you from Old Heart Radio.
All right, we're recording here. Yeah, we're live. It's an episode of In Tune. I'm Lucas here with Avi.
Hey.
And this week we're finally going to establish the trend because sadly I wasn't able to salvage that episode. So
yeah,
this is the first.
Bummer.
I am sorry.
I'm gonna keep that over your head this entire time.
We will.
Like, I secretly think this was like a plot that you made. So that like all of the episodes could be your music and none of them mine. But
yeah,
today,
if this one doesn't come out, you can really hold it to my throat. I will say though, we will have to like sprinkle those in because I was very praising of those albums. I really enjoyed them.
I'm glad that's on the record.
Yeah. should we get the specific albums out there?
Which
ones? Wasn't it? Oh shit! I saved them on Spotify. Let me find
got
them.
you. So it's Lamelda is the name of the artist. Her
Was it
album
M for something.
M for Empathy.
M for Empathy. That's it. And then Roundelay by Lake.
Yes,
I
Roundelay
really
by
enjoyed.
Lake. That was legit. And then also Titanic Rising by Wise Blood.
Yeah, which, okay, I will say, and it's good that that didn't come out because I would heavily contradict myself. The more that I've listened to that, the more I've enjoyed it.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad that you've kind of been re-listening to it. Yeah.
It's one of those, I found that album in particular I've begun to enjoy it so much more now that I've listened to it more.
We should talk about that at some point. Not now, but like reasons why like a first listen to an album could go like not so great, but then like listening to it more, what sticks out to you and like why you like it more. But that's a conversation for another day. But then at the same time, like it's so valid. I can totally see that happening with a plethora of music. Like some of my favorite bands were like that. I want to say Foster the People, a band that completely paved my way into my music taste now. And like when I was coming into high school, I couldn't stand them. And then I continuously listened to their album because there was like one song I liked, and I end up like falling in love with that band. So like it's a thing. I can't deny it. But Wise Blood was I'm enjoying that album more and more. So great.
So we got some fresh stuff. So these are obvious picks this week, and running by me for the most part, not stuff that I would ever listen to. And we were talking before we started recording. Like I've heard of both Foxwarren and Beirut before, but I've never like actively listened to them. So
that was intentional. I'm trying to give you albums that I have a feeling that you've never listened to before. Kind of just like it's a very fresh, ear. Especially talking about certain elements that interest you. Like I'm kind of all these albums that I gave you, which I'll just like really quickly say, like Neon Skyline by Andy Schaaf, Foxwarren's title album, Foxwarren, and Gallipoli by Beirut.
Gallipoli. I think so.
These all have elements that I think you'd enjoy. That's why I gave you. But yeah,
I think to like varying degrees, and I want to sort of go in like ascending order of like what the ones I liked. So I mean, not that that's like a diss to the one that I like the least, but like I want to start with Neon Skylines. So that's the Andy Schaaf. And while I'm like, this was sort of the weakest of the week for me. Like, and it comes from like a sameness, Okay. And I feel like we talked about this the other week with like Mild Minds and Ford. The saving grace of those albums were that they were like 7 or 8 songs. This album is like 10.
It's 11.
It's 11. Okay.
Yeah.
Further cements my point. But like I felt like while I can see myself in like listening to it just like on shuffle, I saved the album. I enjoyed it enough to like put it on my Spotify. I didn't actively discard it as soon as I finished it. I don't think I'll ever like re-listen to it in its entirety straight through,
Okay. I'm trying to cut you off because something that you're saying, which is like, I wish that I had stressed to you beforehand before you listen to this album, is this is a concept album.
Yes.
And you're meant to listen to it straight through, and you're meant to like follow the story. It's basically a story. It's about a night at a bar called the Neon Skyline when the narrator's ex is back in town. And so this is like all 11 songs have to do with this like overarching theme.
Well, shit.
And I want you to re-listen to the album at some point. You know, obviously it's fresh now. Give yourself some time. But I'm curious because if you listen to kind of like the lyrics like very specifically and just like the tonality of each song, it really like emulates the emotions that are being conveyed. Like there are songs on there that are like very positive and very like it's just like it's so hard to explain, but it's just like
I understand what you mean though. It's you're going through the beats of the story through the music.
Yes.
And the music itself is as important as the lyrics that are coinciding it. I totally understand that. I think when I listened to this, it was when I was just like laying around and I wasn't really actively listening to lyrics. Mm-hmm. So I was more so like paying attention to the groove, and like that's something that I've like my like favorite picks of any of the albums we'll talk about today. Mm-hmm. That's something totally consistent. Is that the stuff that has like a nice groove to it is what I latched onto the most.
Sure.
And this album in particular is very like acoustic guitar sent forward. And now that you say this is the concept album that you were talking about, I'm like, fuck. Like,
yeah, and this is one of them. His other album before this. I was kind of debating whether to send that one or this one, but that one, each song is surrounded by a party. Like the album's called The Party. Okay. And so like there's like different characters, but they're all at the same party. And so like, but anyways, back to this one, it's like there's like a list of characters. They reappear in each song and everything. I thought that was really cool just because like I haven't really heard an album like that. To me, that's really unique. Another thing is since it does take place at a bar, what I thought was really cool, I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but there are some songs where in the story when he's like getting tipsy and drunk, the music actually feels like it's stumbling around.
Okay, I noticed that.
That's so cool. But like if you aren't paying attention to the lyrics, then you might be listening to it and you're like, okay, this is like really stumbly and it doesn't,
so that actually
sound good.
That actually clears up a lot to me then. Because I noticed that and I was just like, what the fuck is happening? I was like, this isn't like, I was like, why, like, while some of the stuff really, like, I listened to it, I was like, this is great. But like, there were some other points where I was like, I don't really know what's going on here. And now it makes complete sense to me. I just wasn't paying enough attention to the actual story being told.
Right. Which in itself, I'm sure is, a great critique of the album is, it's very much so an active listening album. Like you kind of, at this point for me, it's one of my favorite albums. I can listen to an individual track and appreciate it.
Yeah.
But like,
it has to be appreciated as like a collective.
Right.
So that's like the polar opposite of how I listen to it.
That's hilarious. But I actually put down like 2 tracks that stood out to me as good, as like my favorites on the album. Like Where Are You Judy, which I'm pretty sure is the second song on the album. And then Try Again, which is I think a bit further down. Yeah.
Like, I want to say Where Are You Judy? It's one of these has like almost like a Cage the Elephant type drum beat going on to it. Mm-hmm. It's very like dry and it's like I said, it's got a bit of a groove to it, and it was a bit of a break from like now that I realize this is the concept album, I sort of feel like a dick saying it, but the like samey guitar and like chord progressions. Mm-hmm. It makes so much more sense that it would feel a bit samey because that's not what you're supposed to be paying attention to.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm so glad that like this is all like kind of coming together now. And I'm really impressed that you like picked up on those things, even if you weren't like really listening super hard to the lyrics.
I feel like I finished half the puzzle.
And now when you re-listen to the album, it's gonna like so many other doors are gonna open up to you, especially if you like listen to the lyrics and like pay attention to like the people, which there's only like 5 people. But so that's one other thing I wanted to focus on is like kind of going back to that idea of it like each song kind of emulating a different emotion. It kind of has a progression throughout the entire album where the overall tone goes like up and down based on like what's happening to this narrator guy. And like one song in particular that stood out to me was 13 Hours. Mm-hmm. That's the one where it's like stumbling around where like the song is basically about like the narrator and like his ex who were at a bar and they're like coming home, but they decided to take a cab, and then they forget to leave a tip. So like she runs back, but then she gets hit by a car. And then like, but they're also like drunk because they're like trying to get home after, you know, going to the bar. And so like the tonality of the songs, like literally it's the feeling you get like when you can't catch your breath. You know, it's like offbeat, it's like stumbling around, but like it fits with what's going on in the song, which is really cool. And then that last song too, Changer, which is the like that to me literally sounds like what a hangover feels like, which makes sense because that's like the last song in an album about going to a bar. Like it's like a very lightheaded song,
sort of floaty.
Like, floaty. It's like heavy modulation. It's like oscillating back and forth. And it's like
a headache.
You know, exactly. It's literally like a headache, but it sounds good. Like I love the song. Anyway, that's just like, kind of
so, okay, because I didn't get it. This is the first thing I want to talk about next week. Okay. I'm gonna re-listen to this shit, and we're gonna talk about that next week.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to. We'll leave it there for now.
All right. Sweet.
And I will discuss it once I've finished the other half of the puzzle, and I'm gonna fucking write down notes on this shit. I rarely do that. I like going off the top of my head, but I'm gonna actively pay attention to this.
Okay, I will give a disclaimer. I don't typically listen to albums of my favorite artists for the first time when I'm high, but I did for this one because I knew that it was a concept album. And let me tell you, listening to this album for the first time when like stoned was such an experience. But we'll talk about that next week.
Oh God. What a ride.
or the next time we're talking about my music, whenever. But
hey, no, it's a whole it's a whole different way of like absorbing content, right?
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. So so keeping with Andy Schaaf though, I want to talk about Foxwarren, which I only realized was Andy Schaaf and like the rest of his band right before we started recording, because apparently I can't read who a song is by on Spotify. I feel like it's invalid at this point, but I enjoyed this. I'm doing air quotes more than Neon Skylines.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I will now enjoy Neon Skylines more after my subsequent listens. But
okay, why did you like Foxwarren better? What's about to you?
I think, and this is something that was present in Neon Skylines in a few songs, specifically the ones I liked, where there was a lot of depth of sound. And what a lot of the songs on Neon Skylines they're very acoustic driven and very vocally driven, primarily vocally driven.
Yeah.
But when it came to Foxwarren, it was the other way around. It was the drums were leading it for the most part. My favorite song on the album is Another Life.
Okay.
It sort of has like a funky sort of like bass and drum riff going on.
Mm-hmm.
Lost on You I liked a lot. Everything Apart I liked a lot. Those are the songs that I wrote down as like sticking out to me for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But I really liked how it had a lot of texture to the sound. In listening to it, listening to it and not really paying attention to the lyrics, which is just what I was doing this week for some reason. I was able to get a lot from the music. I was able to really catch a lot of the elements. And correct me if I'm wrong, there's some like brass going on here too at some points, or like some winds.
Yeah. Actually, Andy Schaaf, he does clarinet. Like that's his kind of like.
That's what I thought.
One of his primary instruments.
I couldn't tell if it was like a clarinet or something like, or something else. But like it was like that's always nice. I enjoy like especially hearing like wind instruments other than like a trumpet in music, you know.
Yeah.
And it was just very rich sounding music. It all blended together to a point. And I listened to this album, I want to say like 2 or 3 times. And like after the first time going back, that's when I was really able to iron out like, oh, these are the songs that stuck out to me. But for the most part, the album like flew through my mind, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed it thoroughly the whole way through.
So we actually had the same exact like interpretation, or at least like contrasting Neon Skyline and Foxwarren. The reason why I gave you those two albums, even though they're kind of led by the same person, is because Neon Skyline is so lyric driven, whereas Foxwarren is literally the opposite, which is something I'm so glad that you like mentioned that. They're so like they have some similarities, but like they really are quite opposite. Foxwarren does have so much more of an emphasis on the instrumentation.
Yeah.
And the lyrics are so much more shallow in Foxwarren. It's literally like, I mean, as I was listening to the lyrics, which let me say, like, you don't really inherently listen to the lyrics for this album because it's like it's muted to an extent, not like really muted, but like it's kind of in the background.
It's mixed differently. Like
exactly.
the mix brings the instruments out as much to an even level, and like for people unfamiliar with mix engineering, like mixing and sound engineering, usually the vocals will stick out just a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In this case, they're pretty much on the same level.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it's more of an album where we can just like listen through it, put it on shuffle, whatever the heck you want.
Totally.
And, like each song kind of can stand out on its own. Overall, I felt like the theme of this album was kind of like a existentialist, like kind of being insecure about like your current life and wanting a different life. Some of the songs are like, lost in a dream, or fall into a dream and like in another life, lost on you, like all these songs. And when I was
very much like imagining, like it's very romantic, I'd say.
Yeah. So that was interesting, but definitely the instruments stood out way more than the lyrics did.
Yeah, I mean, like it falls into that same category as like, while I don't feel like this is derivative of anything, I listen to it in the same way that I listen to like monophonics, like we talked about last week.
Yep.
Like I'll throw this on shuffle and just like in the mix of a playlist, and I'll be more than happy to hear anything come up. Just because the songs are fun, and like if you're willing to like pay attention, you'll catch a ton of layers, but otherwise it's just satisfying music that's well performed and well executed.
The texture that you mentioned is really something that stood out to me too, like in that song Fall Into a Dream, which is I think the second to last song. The first half of the song is like a super catchy like guitar intro, like really hooks you in. And then the latter half of the song, for literally 2 minutes, it's just like this overextended, like instrumental, like mind-bending break. Like, do you like recognize what I'm talking about?
Yeah, totally.
There's
a big like shift in the tonality of it.
Yeah, and then it cuts to the final song, which is like really cool. And for the longest time, I didn't appreciate that kind of break. Because it's like literally 2 minutes, and like it kind of is rough on the ears a bit. But it is an interesting juxtaposition to that last like chill. I mean,
song. I feel like that type of stuff, it works sometimes. Like a dramatic tonal change in the like in the performance can work from time to time, or it can feel completely wrong.
Yeah.
Like that worked in my opinion. Another song that does it really well would be like Posthumous Forgiveness by Tame Impala, where it's a very like aggressive, abrasive intro, like first 2 minutes, and the last 2 minutes are just like this very soft type of ballad type thing going on. It like things like that when they're done right can like it can feed the tonality and which is very different when they're done wrong. It can feel like it should have just been split into two different songs.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So, anything else you wanted to talk about with Foxwarren?
I mean, I actually had kind of a segue
Go
from
for it.
Foxwarren to Beirut's album.
Yeah.
I felt like with Foxwarren and that sort of like dramatic tonal shifts where some of the songs are kind of longer because of it. I felt like Beirut did something very similar with their album and they pulled it off super well. So
I completely agree.
nice.
This is something.
This is a score.
This is something that I wanted to bring up between these three albums. Is that the first one was very vocally driven. It was truly a story, as I've come to realize.
Literally a story, yes.
And Foxwarren became very much more like texture forward, instrument forward. This is like pushing that to another level. There's a lot of texture to the music. Beirut, I've never listened to these guys. I've never gone out. I've like heard a few of their songs, but I've never seeked them out and listened to them. Mm-hmm. God damn! But this like it was.
Let me give a little intro to this album real quick before we talk about. So this is Gallipoli by Beirut, which came out last year in 2019. Tiny little intro about the band because they're kind of a.
Wait, someone's glitching out, Avi. I'm pausing the recording. Wait, we're now recording again.
Okay, we're back.
Where you left off.
Okay, I'm just gonna give a little brief intro about this band, Beirut. They are they're very unique to me because they use a lot of like global instrumentation. Like, first of all, it's very instrument heavy. The lyrics are pretty shallow. The main guy, Zach, doesn't really focus on lyrics. He instead uses so many different kinds of instruments of so many different countries all around, mostly Europe, actually. And so Gallipoli has a lot of like sounds from like Italy, Greece, Germany specifically. So it's a very unique in the sense that like it's an indie band, but they're not just like your typical 4-piece indie band. This is like using a lot of cool instruments. So I want to hear your thoughts about what you liked, what you didn't like.
So I mean, like when going through this, and I really don't have much negative to say here. I really enjoyed this album. In listening to it, like I noticed those elements of like different styles of songwriting, different styles of song structure, like you said, deriving from different places.
Yeah.
But then there was also some like really interesting like modular synthesis going on too, which I don't know. Are you familiar at all with what that means?
Slightly. Tell me about it.
Essentially, you get a bunch of tiny like synthesizer bricks, pretty much, and you fill like a box or like a suitcase. A lot of people will get an old suitcase and fill them with these things. Connect a power supply to it, and you essentially build your own synthesizer, and it leads to these like very full sounding textures or these really weird sounding textures. And I totally picked up on some of that like unconventional forms of synthesis, and that's usually awesome. Probably using like different kinds of sequencers and not like a keyboard. And I mentioned this I'm totally blanking. I know we talked about it in the last podcast, but you've watched Stranger Things, right?
Yeah.
So you know the upside down theme, like bum 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 bum.
Sure.
That all those notes are in between like notes on a keyboard, so you won't be able to recreate that. So they use modular synthesizers to tune it into these in between notes. So it's why it feels sort of unsettling.
That's so neat.
Yeah.
Wow.
So like I could totally find a bit of that in some of these songs. And like what we were saying about Foxwarren right at the end when it came to some of those like tonal shifts, like there was a lot more of that in this album too that I feel like worked.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it's this song, but the Gaz for Za, like I think the last 2.5 minutes of that song, it went from this like really like relatively upbeat sounding song into this nearly ambient, very like, peaceful soundscape.
Literally exactly what I wrote on I have like little notes like when I'm going through the albums, and I literally focus on that track for the same reason. Like, let me read. This is literally what I wrote. I like the combo of piano, horns, and up-tempo percussion switches to an ambient outro. Like,
there you go.
So, but yeah, that's exactly like the kind of tonal shift. Like some of these songs are very long, but there's like so many different layers to them, and they pull it off. Like usually when a song is really long, I get bored of it and whatever. So that's really
but the length is broken down with a lot of variety.
Yeah.
Like, and I think the thing that was most satisfying to me and something that I love about most of my favorite bands is what's going on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Technical difficulties. This is what happens when you record over Zoom. So something about my favorite bands that was present here is that like there was a lot of soundscapes. Like it came with, like at the end of Das Verzan, there's like it evolves into this ambient piece almost. A lot of the intros to the songs were just these very smooth, very like airy synthesizers, and like or layered in pianos with a lot of texture to them. And it helps set the stage. It helps like paint a picture almost. And it totally lends itself to the music being of different places in the world as well.
Yeah.
It helps set a stage for the music. And I always appreciate that. It adds a almost cinematic quality to it. You could see it almost as like a score in a film.
Exactly. You can really tell that the person that is doing this music, like the lead guy, is a music producer at heart. Like he really understands how to do this. And he, I mean, unless you think otherwise, like this is definitely a feat in music production.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Because it's so fun to listen to and there's so much going on. And you said like it's one central producer, but then a few other people, or was it all?
Yeah, I mean it's a band. I'm not quite.
They sort of have
sure.
like a frontman.
Yeah, the guy. I guess the frontman writes all the songs. His name is Zach Condon. I'm not completely sure like whether the other members of the band are only just playing with him live, if they record all the instruments in studio together, or if he just does all the instrumentation. But I definitely know he's like a multi-instrumentalist.
Yeah.
So
I mean, whatever.
He does it super well. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I don't care if there's multiple people on this. This shit's good. Like
it is.
You were telling me that this is supposedly like a very difficult entry into this discography. Like akin to what we were talking about with Metronomy in the first episode where In Tune came back. It's sort of an abrasive point of entry.
It is. It's very like, unless you're really into music production like you are and I am, this album is going to be hard to get into if you've never heard Beirut before. They have some other albums that are very like singer-songwriter like heavy, like, it's very typical song structures and they do it super well. Like it's really catchy. It still has elements of like other instrumentation like brass and things like that. Those are really good entry point albums. This one, another thing is if you listen primarily to lyrics first, like some people do, whereas other people listen to the instruments more. If you listen more to lyrics, this album might not be the best entry point. The main guy actually said in an interview that he kind of rushed through the lyric writing. He primarily focused on getting really, really good instrumentation, and the lyrics were kind of like in the background, just like fill in some space. So it's like very shallow lyrics.
The lyrics are really treated like an instrument as much as the rest of it. It's meant to be filling the gap in the sound.
Yes, exactly. I personally love this album. I've been following Beirut for years. They're one of my favorite ever bands. So I was really excited for this album. And they've got so many other incredible albums too. So like,
it's something we'll probably have to go back and talk about more.
Sure.
Like looking at the discography, it goes back to like, I want to say his first album was like 2006.
Yeah. I think this is their 5th album in 13 years.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's great that I enjoyed it as much as it did. I'm surprised to see how it evolves.
And they have some other albums that I really dislike. Like they have some stuff that's really out there. They go crazy at some points. Like, like I mentioned, some of their music kind of emulates sounds from different countries. They focus on like the Balkans, Eastern Europe, like Poland. Super like interesting sounds that I've never heard before, and instruments that I've never heard before.
Like that is something that I applaud when it comes to musicians. So many people that gain some level of like notoriety or acclaim for what they do will never evolve. And I was listening, there was a great interview. I forget what band it was, but they were talking about
Parcels.
not parcels.
Just kidding. We have to connect them into
Check.
this episode.
Okay. I forget who it was, but they essentially threw some shade at Maroon 5 for like having one really good album and then selling out. And they were talking about how it's just like it's unsatisfying if you never change. And if you're never willing to piss off some of your potential base by doing something different, then you'll never actually bring in any new fans.
Yeah.
So I think I can applaud that. Like it says something that you still enjoy the band despite them having done stuff in the past that you don't like.
Yeah, and I expect to end up liking that stuff probably in the future.
Yeah.
I think that liking something completely all at once, although sometimes it works, other times it just makes you get tired of it really quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is something that I applaud too. The fact that they have such a diverse set of albums. They kind of like, and they're still going, you know, this album came out last year. I'm super excited to see what else they come up with in the future, especially like this main guy. So yeah, that was really cool.
This album, it reminded me a lot of Chet Faker. Are you familiar at all?
Not really. You should send me an album and we'll talk about it.
I will. We'll have to talk about it. But like he did a cover of No Diggity that got big like 10 years ago almost. Mm-hmm. And he did this. He was like producer, sang all the songs, produced everything himself until like maybe 5 years ago. And then he released an album, toured it, and then pretty much went out and said like, this is a really self-destructive lifestyle that I'm living right now. And I'm going to completely shift how I make music. And he made another album about a year ago, and it's called Run Fast, Sleep Naked. And he recorded it each song in a different part of the world whenever he felt randomly inspired over those 5 years between albums. And it's totally different. And like, I was fucking pissed when it came out because it wasn't what I liked from his original.
Yeah.
And he released it under his real name. He wasn't Chet Faker anymore. He was Nick Murphy.
Well, that's Nick Murphy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's Nick Murphy.
I recognize Nick Murphy, but not Chet Faker.
Yeah, so Chet Faker was his old producer name, which is that's when I originally discovered him. So Run Fast Sleep Naked it was sort of this deviation. I eventually watched that live and was like, oh, this is like good shit. This is great. But still, it's so tonally different that it pissed me off. But now I'm able to find value in it because it's different.
That's really cool. What songs stood out to you in this album besides Gauze for
I would say on Manow Island.
Okay.
I Giardini and the last song Finn.
Oh yeah. That was let's talk about that last track.
Okay. It's the embodiment of what I was saying with soundscapes and like texture and depth. Without lyrics.
It was the perfect instrumental outro for the album. Like Absolutely. The harmonies were on point. It just resonated super well. I don't have any experience with like those kind of like soundscapes, like music production, sort of synthesizer stuff. You do, I don't, but we still like both kind of like, you know, appreciated that.
It's
outro.
something that you can latch onto, and especially a good outro will be able to take every idea from the album, put it together, and just like exit it in some kind of grand scope usually.
Yeah.
And like that, I feel like it was a perfect synopsis of what came before. It was with a lot of, I mean, like it worked in the end, and like it was very smooth, very airy, and I feel like it took pieces from all the other songs, made it work. And I'm pretty sure it had no lyrics too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were some vocals, but no lyrics. Like it was some like harmonies.
Yeah, it was all harmony. Who else has really good harmonies? Parcels.
Yes.
Check the box.
Came back twice.
No, it's but I mean, like, you gotta be like having a fundamental understanding of how that stuff works, especially when it comes to soundscapes. It's all harmony. Like, it's all like, I'm going to play this chord on a synthesizer. Somebody match it on a piano. Somebody play a guitar hitting like the same chord. And that it just builds and builds and builds. And that was done to such good success.
You're right. Yeah. I typically don't really think of harmonies when they're not linked to vocals. Yeah. Like vocal harmonies are like a very prominent thing. Yeah. But you're right. With Beirut, he does so many instrumental harmonies too.
Yeah.
Which really just makes it sound so nice. Like it's so overall, like the album was very warm, very like almost like nostalgic, like
Yeah.
you know.
I feel like it has that like like brightness, you know, like an old. Yeah, I think nostalgic's the right way to put it. Like you see it's almost like in rose-colored glasses, you know.
Yeah, I think the reason why I think it's nostalgic, not necessarily because of the harmonies, but since it's such a like travel-esque album, like it's about so many like different countries and everything. It's like listening to it makes me feel like I'm away from home. Like I'm listening to something
that's a good way to put it.
Not typically what I would listen to, instruments that I'm not really familiar with, and it's like a vacation. It's like visiting somewhere that you've never visited before.
Yeah,
that's what this album sounds like.
It's an audible escape.
Yes,
there we go.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I like that. I like that a lot. So I feel like that's the perfect jumping off point of that album too.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like it gives you everything you need to just get lost in it. And there's something really beautiful about music like that. You can just listen to, and it like you can just completely buy into for like an hour.
Yes. Although I would say, to like kind of cement that point, is like I can't really see myself listening to this album like kind of just like on shuffle, like doing normal stuff. Like I kind of save this album for like when I really want to appreciate some really good music and sit down with it and just listen to it.
Or I can feel like I can listen to this album like I'll listen to it again, but I can put it on the background, but I won't have anything mixed into it.
Yeah.
I won't shuffle other music into it.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like that would be doing a disservice to like the general flow of it. There are a few songs I feel like can stand out as singles, but in the grand scheme of things, no. You gotta listen to it straight through.
I agree. Yeah.
So high praise to Beirut's album. I really liked Foxwarren's, and I'm gonna listen to Andy Schaaf's again.
Oh man, that was great. I love this conversation.
Yeah, and we will touch on that album again, Neon Skylines, because now I want to listen to it one more time.
Be continued. Yep.
Absolutely. So, what have you been listening to this week?
That's a good question, Lucas. I've been listening. Honestly, I've been revisiting Mac DeMarco.
Dude, so good.
Yeah, right. It's like such feel-good music. Like he
for
literally
a while,
just like,
right when I discovered Mac DeMarco, I was like, "Fuck, this is like discount Tame Impala." But then I listened to him more, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah."
The thing is, listening to his music more makes me really realize he understands so much about music, even though it sounds like on the forefront, it kind of sounds like he doesn't really care. You can tell like there's so many different elements. Yeah, sure. It didn't really hit me until like just listening to it again this week, like listening through some of his albums.
Yeah.
And then also Frances Cone, I've been listening to. I just kind of discovered her. Have you heard of her?
I've heard of her in passing. I haven't really listened to her much.
Yeah, I just discovered her. She's like the indie pop sort of artist. Yeah, it's great, good stuff. What about you?
Yeah. A handful of things, actually. I want to quickly mention it. Me and Jared talk about it all the time, but Hot Ones, Mac DeMarco has a great Hot Ones interview.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that that guy on YouTube that like makes famous people try out like hot peppers?
Hot Wings, yeah.
Hot Wings, okay.
And he ends it with the hottest hot sauce in the world. But Mac DeMarco's on it, and it's a great episode.
Let's check that out.
Yeah, it's totally worth watching. It's me and Jared agree that it's a YouTube series that you watch one episode and then you find yourself like 12 hours later having watched like 40 episodes. And
there's one with Brad Leone that's the only one I've seen.
Yeah, the one with Brad Leone is good. I hope they get like Delaney on it or something.
Yeah.
Listener, me and Awi both really like Bon Appetit, if you can't tell.
Yeah, Bon Appetit YouTube channel, the Test Kitchen. Oh, I would die for Claire Savitz from the Test Kitchen. It's a meme. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. So anyway. I really want to buy one of their shirts, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
I'll do a bonus special episode just about Bon Appetit.
Bone Us episode. God damn it. The stuff I've been listening to this week. So I sent you this a while back, but Rufus Du Sol did a live sort of set in the middle of nowhere in Joshua Tree with no audience.
Oh, there was no audience there?
There was no audience.
I was wondering why it was so quiet. No one clapped for him.
Yeah, they were just performing their music, a short live set in the middle of Joshua Tree. And they set up lights through everything. It was fucking cool. They released an album of every song they played. And specifically, like, we're talking about, this episode has been a lot about like texture and depth of sound. Fuck, do they nail it. And what's fascinating about watching them is that they really, it's predominantly electronic music, but in interviews they talk a lot about wanting to have a visual element to electronic music. So they bring all their keyboards out. They're not triggering MIDI clips. They're actually playing everything. They have some stuff sequenced that is too difficult to play on the fly, but for the most part they're actually using it, whether it's with like drum pads or like their actual drummer playing on the set. Which, something that's really impressive is that some of their songs are like at like 140 BPM, and their drummer has a artificial kick going. That's one of the things they sequence for him to keep time. He tries to keep up with his synced kick with another kick to keep it layered. And he says like it's such a pain in the ass sometimes when the other guys like speed up a bit and he's got to keep up.
Oh wow!
Because I think there's some fascinating stuff about that band. And like from a technical perspective, I really appreciate them. So Rufus Du Sol. And then I came across this producer who goes by OTR. And
I just laugh because to me, I work at
tasting room.
Bad from Brompton, and OTR is our code word for Olympia Tasting Room.
Yeah, it's this dude, and he taught himself everything about music production. He has no formal music training. And he just bought a MIDI keyboard while he was on while he was traveling across Japan for an internship, and he taught himself how to compose music. He was like in aerospace engineering, and he dropped it, and he's touring now.
Oh, I love that.
So he made a full album called Lost at Night that I think was dropped maybe a couple months ago, and I just came across it on Spotify and have been listening to it. It's good. It really shows how like people that just have the time and the patience to learn can really kick ass at music production.
Yeah.
Sadly, I don't have that kind of patience.
I'm trying to get into that. I don't have anything yet, but I have my interest peaked.
Yeah. Dude, this is why I would love to like sit down with you and actually like try and work on something, because you're very like naturally good at this stuff. I have like the ear for it, but I have like none of the fucking patience to do any of it by myself.
Like, I'll need to collaborate.
I'll sit down. Like I have a synth, I have a MIDI keyboard, I have a drum pad, and I'll make stuff. And then I'll get pissed. and I'll be like, fuck this.
I'm the opposite. I literally have nothing. Like I literally just have my guitar and a computer and a microphone. And I try to like do so much stuff, but like I don't have the stuff to do it with. So I'm like, drawing blanks.
Dude,
we'll have to combine our skills.
Dude, my old computer is just like, I'll get like the first verse of an idea, and then I'll be like, fuck, how do I transition to a chorus? And then I'll put it away, and I just never touched it again. I have like 40 just like one verse songs.
I actually listened to an interview with Kevin Parker, and he said that when he's writing songs, he has to do it like in one session.
That's
if he leaves it, it's just no go. You can't really.
That's what I've realized too. Is like if I had like, it's usually in my case like, oh fuck, I like need to go sleep, and I need to open in the morning or something. Like that's if. It's one of those things of just like, if you persevere long enough, you'll probably be able to get something done.
Exactly. Yeah.
So but like this OTR guy, fucking great. Olympia Tasting Room, go check him out. No, OTR Lost at Night, fun. I might send you that album next week.
Yeah.
And then also KEXP featured an album called, it's like Tao and the Get Down Stay Down.
Oh yeah, love that band.
Yeah, it's called Temple. I've never heard of them before, and I just downloaded this album. I listened to like the first song so far, and I really liked it.
That's cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah, they with Shape, KEXP, always good to look at their YouTube channel. Follow them on Instagram. They talked with a bunch of record store owners to see what their plan was in the midst of this crisis.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, fascinating.
Nice.
But yeah, is that a pod?
That's a pod, I think.
It's a pod.
Must be.
Oh boy.
You want to plug your stuff?
Sure, yeah. Stumble through it, why don't I? So my personal Instagram is Casserole, CASSOLROLL. Go ahead and follow me if you want to see my bullshit. I don't think I've posted there in like 6 months, but that's neither here nor there. And then Old Heart Radio on Instagram, Old Heart and Space on Twitter. Check us out.
Ooh,
Recommend us to your friends. Send us questions. Avi?
I'm on Instagram as Lemon Leaf, LE.MON Lemon Leaf. Yeah.
There it is.
And yeah, I mean, check it out. I don't really have stuff on there yet, but hopefully someday.
Hey, and then your YouTube channel as well. Didn't you get a comment?
I mean, you can find me on YouTube. My my username I made when I was like 10, so it's Obster99. So that's fun.
Dude, that's the kind of stuff that you probably think is cool when you're 10.
Right?
Did you ever I imagine when you were your youth teen in late middle school, early high school, thought that like racing games were really cool.
Yeah,
that was
Need
me.
for Speed.
Oh fuck yeah, dude! My name on Instagram was my name on Xbox Live for the longest time was like Bugatti 42 or something like that.
At least you chose a good one.
Yeah, it wasn't though.
A good car. I guess it's a motorcycle brand.
Yeah. Whatever.
Anyway,
that's a pod.
That's pod. Maybe we'll condense that, or let's keep it all.
It's Old Heart Radio. We're gonna leave it in.
Nice.
Listen again, folks. Talk to you later.
See you next week.
Oh, fuck! I almost ended the meeting.